Innovation Unplugged from the Alabama Community College System's Innovation Center takes you inside Alabama's workforce development. Join us for enlightening conversations with community leaders and industry experts showcasing experiences, addressing key issues, and celebrating successes in the workforce initiatives across the state. Welcome, friends and family listeners. This is a unique production of the Innovation Unplugged, a production of the Innovation Center. We are in coastal Alabama Community College. They're in their beautiful building, Fairhope, Alabama. We're down here for the Workforce Officers Association meeting, and so we decided to have our friend, colleague, Dr. Josh Duplantis on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this one, if you are a routine listener, which is about 3 people, this one looks a lot different. We don't have the normal studio, so we are on location in Fairhope, and but we snagged this opportunity. Josh is a very busy man, and we working to have all of our colleges on, and so we said, hey, let's while we're down there, let's go ahead and get that, because it's about a 4.5 hour drive for you to Tuscaloosa.
It is, right.
So that's more than a day's work for a 45-minute production. So anyway, so we're here, man. I really appreciate you and your whole team of the work you did to get this production this time here. We're very thankful for you for a lot of reasons, but specifically today for this. So we always start every show with a guest, and just give us a quick rundown of where you came from, how you got here, and what brought Dr. Duplantis to this moment.
Yeah, great. Well, we're really happy to have you here. We're really proud of what we have here in Fairhope, and this podcast studio is, kind of part of this unique dynamic realities program we have here at Coastal. So it's really cool. We're really happy about where it's heading and what our students are doing. But to back up, a little bit about me. I always like to say I've been in workforce and labor market type stuff for about 30 years, and that's because I grew up in deep South Louisiana in the contracting business, mainly for shipbuilding. So, grew up in a welding shop, was running beads at 11, 12 years old on old burning 6013s on an old Lincoln welding machine. And, interesting growing up in the oil field in deep South Louisiana. You see a lot of ups and downs economically. I always joke that if it's going well, you see a lot of new trucks and boats, and then you see them in people's front yards for sale. And so I think those ups and downs kind of drove me to go to college, and went to LSU undergrad, and actually got an undergraduate degree in workforce development, which is odd.
Really?
Yeah, to some extent. So did my time there, had a great time in Baton Rouge, and immediately got recruited to Cargill, big agribusiness firm. And so huge, and that was an interesting time. I had not been far out of Louisiana much. It still had that very thick accent, and I loaded up a U-Haul and moved to Oklahoma City. And so,
what was that like?
I remember it was the U-Haul and the dog, and it was by myself. And I remember spending the night out near Dallas, and kind of getting up there, and just really excited about taking that new role. And it really was. You learn a lot quick when you get into this corporate America thing, and of course, growing up in a very You worked in the plant, you worked in the operation room, you unclogged clogged grain at 3 o'clock in the morning, you worked every shift. You rolled with salesmen. We had plants in Abilene and Amarillo. So spent about 2 years there, and really, it's funny, today we're dealing with a hurricane, but I was home when Hurricane Katrina hit.
Really?
And home being in South Louisiana.
Yeah.
And so just family tugging at me. I didn't go back, so I left that job and actually, worked storm relief for a while. I got my CDL and was driving and picking up scraps, busting up concrete, helping family rebuild after Katrina. And from there, I was kind of like, well, that was a little different path that I didn't expect, and ended up at Auburn. For kind of the Truman Pierce Institute out of the College of Education there at Auburn. So did a lot of helping teachers use technology in the classroom, pedagogy, and then at night I worked for the men's basketball team, which was fun as well. So
What'd you do for the basketball team?
Straight up, academic coach, life coach.
Okay.
Practice for a couple hours with them in the afternoon, and then take them to study hall, take them to eat, make sure they did everything they needed to do during the day. Check classes, and so I was that grad assistant that peeked into windows to make sure that they were not only in class but sitting in the front row. As at the time it was Coach Lebo, Jeff Lebo was his name. So, but that was a good experience, and then from there spent a good almost 9 years at the University of Southern Mississippi. In community development, economic development, workforce development, student volunteerism was in our department there, and kind of worked from manager to director of that unit at Southern Miss, and got married then, and my wife started her career there, and so we had a really, really good stint at Southern Miss, and still stay very connected to that institution. And then when we moved to Alabama, took a stint at University of South Alabama. And then it was really neat because at that point I had about 12 years in 4-year institutions, right? But a very technical background, coming up in a welding shop, working for Cargill, and got the opportunity to lead our regional workforce council, which to me was it was an excellent blending of those skills, if you will, and one of the interesting things about coastal Alabama, our college, is that we're a merger of 3 former institutions, and it kind of had a new president at the time, and kind of called me, and one of our current presidents, Jeff Lynn, actually called me, he was vice chancellor at the time, and said, we really need somebody to come and lead the workforce initiative at Coastal, and it's going to be a unique challenge with 12 campuses, 90 buildings.
What year was that?
That was 2019. So.
Okay. Gotcha.
Covering 20% of the land mass of the state of Alabama.
That's funny.
So, from Gilberttown to Gulf Shores, and I was running the region, obviously in the regional workforce council role. So I came to the college, and now 5 years later, we sit here. So it's been a great ride, and again, I really have enjoyed the 2-year college, because for me. Again, it's kind of been a mesh of those skills. Again, the skills that I kind of grew up with in a very technical environment.
Yeah.
Started my career with, and even the 12 or so years in 4-year institutions, all blend together.
So I didn't know all that about you. I knew some of it. I came into this, I guess my knowledge of Josh Duplantis came in when you were on the Regional Workforce Council. I started at Calhoun in 2018. Took me about a year to figure out what I was even going to do with my life there. But 2019, I started getting involved in all the agents, WOA, and all the things.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I remember hearing that name, and I didn't really understand what a workforce council was, because I was in K-12 forever, so I had no reference. But it's been fun to watch all that and to watch the things grow. And when you're in one place doing work, and then you see success somewhere else, you watch it, So. Not in a stalker way at all, because that would be weird, but just observing, like, okay, well, what's that guy doing? It seems like he's got his plan. 20% of the landmass, Gilberttown to Gulf Shores, the range of industry in that area, the range of skills of development that's needed for people. How do you handle that? Because I'm thinking of like Chad Sutton or Andrew Robbins or Kerry Wright up in the Northeast, like all of those different things they have to handle, and it's different, but how do you handle all of those differences on the daily?
It's easy. It depends what pair of shoes you put on in the morning, and my wife doesn't have to ask where I'm going, because if I put on my cowboy boots, I'm going to Clark County. And if I put on my dress shoes like today, I'm hanging around Baldwin County. I say that jokingly, but our region and is so unique, and I think it's helped me, at my time in the Regional Workforce Council, our regional workforce councils provide a lot of value as intermediaries. I think one of the challenges that I always speak about, even with our current director, is, how do you provide value as an intermediary? It's a little unique. And I know when I was in that role, I said, well, we've got to become the labor market experts in this region. We've got to do that so that we can provide value for our business and industry. We've got to study the things and know the things that are of value, so we can be of value in that intermediary space. So really spend a lot of time digging that and kind of learning, and it is so unique, so diverse. You look at our Thomasville campus, which is 2 hours and 3 minutes from where we sit. I do know to the minute how long it takes to get to every one of our campuses, barring traffic. It sits. There are 5 major paper mills within a 30-mile radius of that Thomasville campus. There's probably not another community college site in the United States that can say that. So when you go up there and look at our technical training and workforce, we've got a lot of apprenticeships up there. We're really proud of that. That's pretty unique. And when you go into that campus, every time I take an industry partner, they always kind of lead into the same conversation. You've trained a lot of people out of here. Coastal has, not me personally, right?
Sure.
Or, the Alabama Southern was the previous college there, and I think another name before that. But that's so unique. And then, you get down to Baldwin County, one of the fastest growing counties in the country. And of course this booming hospitality and tourism scene with our beaches. We bring in 8 million visitors that leave behind $8 billion and that's just not a Baldwin County thing. That's an Alabama thing. I mean, this is. Baldwin County provides a lot of tax dollars to Montgomery because of that. We understand that. We're always trying to support that. And then, of course, over the last several years with a focus on growing that manufacturing base. Obviously the Novelis announcement a year and a half ago was humongous, and that investment now is up to $4.2 billion, and it's going to be the largest single investment in Alabama economic development history. So that's kind of been a big part of our world, is bringing them on board. And we just started a FAME chapter that really kind of brings our manufacturing workforce development scheme up in Baldwin County to a level it's really never been before. And then everywhere in between. And your lumber and your wood products. And so you got to understand the market. Every community that we serve has its own vibe, if you will, and you kind of got to learn that, and kind of get to know the people, and be able to work a little bit different depending on where you're at in any given day.
Yeah, knowing the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I got my first principal job, it was in a county school, way on the edge, and I came from Hartsville City, and they weren't fancy by any stretch, but it was different than the county. And so I get out there in my suit, and about 3 weeks in, the bus driver's like, "Hey, why are you wearing that suit every day?" I'm like, "I'm supposed to. That's what Bill wants." The superintendent. That's how he dresses. He goes, "Well, Bill doesn't work where you work. Yeah. Do you have any blue jeans in your house?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." So he's like, "You need to read the room, bud." Basically, is what he said. But I had to differentiate like that. So I get that. And working at Calhoun is the same. Like, you go from different company, and it's a different mindset at everyone. But in the end, there's still that common thread of what they need to be. Goals.
I think for us is goals for sure, because when you look at this vast footprint, and again, you look at, we are serving counties that, the data shows population loss year after year. How do you approach that again versus coming to a place like we sit where 17 new people are moving here every day? You've got to be goal driven, and those goals change. Just depending on the landscape of kind of where you're at. Like I said, I see a dividing line between when I say we're going to do workforce development versus we're going to do workforce training. And as we talk about what you guys do with the Innovation Center, especially the product that you've provided for us to use, I am most proud of when we run those courses, when we run it with a partner that is utilizing it for more than just workforce training, right?
Right.
More than just saying we're going to give you that. Nick Moore says the wooden nickels, right? Kind of referring to if you train too many people and there's no real outcomes.
Yeah. Well. Yes.
And then that's true, and that happens in the workforce training space. I think in the workforce development space, and what we've seen, and there's 3 municipalities here in Baldwin County that use our Skills for Success courses in the compensation and advancement matrix, right? To me, that's a goal, right? If you come to us to enhance your skill set and you return to that job and that skill set gets you a raise, an improvement in title, I mean, that's where we want to be.
Yeah.
We're spread too thin over 10 counties to do it any other way besides to really focus on quality, because we want our partners to either, be able to upskill that incumbent workforce, or, I believe we're still a state leader in apprenticeship. I mean, our numbers continue to grow there, but when you see those apprentices there a year, 2 years, and we're just starting to see that, 4.5, 5 years into some of our programs. And that's something that we brag about. You start some of these things and you say, well, the young people are still in the program. That's great. Well, great. The young people have finished the program. But it's really been special for us over the last few months, and especially with some of our apprenticeship programs, to say, hey, that initial cohort is still there 2 years after apprenticeship completion. Because if you start talking to the companies about that and the reduction in turnover, the reduction of quality errors, those things, those are goals that our business partners have, right? So that's ones that we want to share. We want to make sure we're developing workforce development programs that help us and them achieve those goals.
Do you see that with the Skills for Success groups that you mentioned, the 3 municipalities, Daphne, you've told me this before, Daphne, Fairhope,
Foley.
and Foley.
Right.
Do you see that with them, that they've reduced their turnover? Or tell me more about that, because that's very interesting to us.
Well, and I'll go back to a video that we did together, right, on this young man named Trey Moore. And whoever's listening, all you got to do is if you Google Innovation Center and Trey Moore, you will get the results. And we first saw Trey in a CDL class, and I think Trey was 19 years old, right?
Yeah.
And, right out of high school, and did something that was maybe more popular 30 or 40 years ago than it is now, right? Like, go get the government job, go get a job at the city, and Trey saw that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Trey comes to us, gets a CDL. Well, of course, he's entrusted with a little bit more responsibility because he's driving city trucks and doing that thing. And then, I walk into, of course, we got into the CDL thing first, and then really got into the skid steer thing. I walk in probably our second or third cohort, and I, recognize there's Trey again.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, well, they told me if I came back and got additional certification, I'd make a little bit more money. Well, that's cool. Right.
Absolutely.
And then a couple months later, we get in the excavator business, the excavator training business, and guess who we see again? We see Trey. And, so again, that happened over probably a 2-year span. But you think about that young man, 3 years into 25-year retirement at 22 years old, and he was already really up into that mid-upper 20s range as far as per hour, which is not typical for a young municipal
not at
worker.
21, no.
Right?
No, absolutely not.
But he utilized what was in front of him, and if they offered him something that says, hey, you go and you earn this credential, you're going to move forward, that's the stories we like to create. And I think that's a good example of when I say we want it embedded in compensation and advancement matrix. Trey's the perfect story. And again, I encourage everybody to look at that video that you guys produced in the Innovation Center. Again, just a little click on the Google machine away.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. So I'm flying solo today. Normally I'm not the only host. Julie or Brandy or Kayla are with us. And so I was thinking about them, since they're not here, like each of their categories, what questions they might ask. And from a story like Trey, and how do we get that story to other Treys out there? Like, what is your approach on marketing? Because we struggle with it. Like, you guys are so busy at the college, and we don't want to step in and say, well, let's do that for you. But how do you get authentic, effective marketing out there?
That, really, I'll be honest with you, it goes back to the quality component. And I don't know that we've had to market a whole lot, especially in certain parts of the Skills for Success thing.
Sure.
It's those relationships, And it's really been by request. When are you going to do that next class? And that's really been cool. I mean, with the heavy equipment platform, it's really been cool because we've attracted a demographic that I didn't know we would, and it's been the guy that's got 25 years experience. We've seen that in the class in the Skills for Success. The safety checks. They're paying attention to basic maintenance. We've also seen
Check.
that. Yeah, we've also
Well
seen
done.
it in CDL, right?
Yeah.
I think it was the city of Orange Beach, who's a great partner of ours in the CDL program, came to us one time and said, I know the CDL program is meant to get people a license, but can I send people who already have a license through the program? Because my younger drivers are coming back and paying attention to those things. So,
Yeah.
Again, I go back to, we market in all the different ways.
Sure.
We have the monthly newsletter. I think we got 8,000 emails on that thing, and that whole study, it's like a 43% open rate, which is really good.
Nice. Yes, nice.
And that's for our whole department. I usually try to write a economics 101 lesson there, and people like to read that, and again show off our students in Skills for Success, but also in our workforce programs and our apprenticeships and all those different types of things. But again, when you really make a difference with those partners, so they continue to come back and ask for more.
Mm-hmm. So my dad had a package store when I was a kid, and put it in that Buick. And I asked him one time, I did it for years, and finally I was old enough. I was like, why do you do that? He goes, well, if they never have to walk in the store, then they're never going to go anywhere else. And they're always going to come back here because we treat them well.
Yeah.
And they always get what they want, and there's no questions. And so he would know, like, they would always bring a certain amount of money. They bring a $20, bring a $40, and so he knew the change that was going. So it's a crazy thing, but he was taking care of that. And so those people would drive for almost 2 hours because the way we lived in all the dry counties. This was in the 80s, 90s. But that was the thing. He said, if they know that I'll take care of them, and then they'll bring all their friends too. And boy, they did.
Yes.
Boy, they did. And that's so I can appreciate that for sure. What about the course? Like, you obviously are very accomplished in all things, and all the stuff you do. Obviously, looking at your resume, just that we talked about here. When you look at our courses, and this is speaking to Brandy Merrill, our director of curriculum design. What do you see in that on the theory part?
Mm-hmm.
How does that speak to your instructional mind, and what do you like about it, and what would you improve it with?
Well, I think the concept for me, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is efficiency, and how we do this. And I love the 60-day concept, right? And you and I have had that conversation. That's where we try to start. Like, what does this person need to know? So I think we're clearly identifying the expectation of what is going to go on in a course and what we feel like students can accomplish. I've really the checklists in the labs from a competency standpoint have been very beneficial, and the theory has been quality. And I'm fortunate that I came up at a time. I remember when I was my last semester at LSU, I came back home because it was that kind of internship practicum semester.
Right.
And went back and worked in the welding shop, and I worked at the local feed store slinging bags of feed in people's car, right? But I would go to an itinerant site in Houma, Louisiana, and the aide at the library would open a VHS tape, and that was distance learning. Right.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I mean, this was, 22 years ago.
Absolutely.
And that was the start of kind of where we're at today. So I've been fortunate to be, primarily in the post-secondary world over the last 22 years to see it go from, again, when they were, looked like an Amazon package in the bubble tape, getting the VHS tape, and that's how you took your class, to where we are now. And so I think, and, I've also seen it go through even with the modern technology tools where online curriculum just be so dang dry. It's really not hard to figure out how to use Articulate and put a 100-point PowerPoint slide in there and kind of voice it over.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's a big part of it. You guys understood, one of the things your design team understands is today's capacity for attention. So, there's always a checkbox. There's always something I will tell you, and I always want to brag on that. Coastal was the first Skills for Success lab in Alabama.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. I would never forget that, man.
Well, and I'll tell you the story behind that too. But it's right when it was first started. I'll never forget. Mara Harrison was the consultant brought in to kind of help kickstart it. And literally those two, one of the fortunate things we have in our jobs is a nice little Christmas break, and I think it was probably two days before we left for Christmas break, which is always a time that you're trying to wrap up a lot of loose ends. And she called and said, that first Friday back, the chancellor says that we need a proof of concept on Skills for Success. And
yes.
Yep. And so, thankfully, I called a good friend and a great partner of ours in Pete Bloom, Panini Pete, as he's known locally. And I said, Pete, I need 10 employees really bad to do this. And so that was the start of it. But to back it up, I was probably one of the first people that actually had access to a theory portion of the course. And I remember...
No doubt.
I sat down with my then 8-year-old daughter, and she loves.
She's an aspiring chef too.
She is an aspiring chef, and she participated in the first lab. And Pete has already offered her a job, and she just turned 11. So I've got 4 years left before that, 48 months and counting before that becomes a reality. But I remember she figured it out too. I learned, and she learned.
Yeah.
Right. And that was so interesting. So. I think taking that extra effort that you guys have taken to do quality video work and quality instructional design puts it in a different category of online learning. And again, watching it evolve over the year, watching some of the stuff that's out there now, that to me, that's the quality piece and how it's produced is a really top notch.
Well, I know she'll appreciate hearing that, and I'll be sure to pass it on to her. I remember, and I was at UNA doing my undergrad, maybe, and distance learning became a thing. And you could go check out your semester videos. It was a duffel bag of VHS tape. So, and now I don't have my phone with me, but like the entire course is right there on your phone. So really, we say anywhere, anytime. And if your phone is new enough and web connected, man, you can just take that course right there. And that's an interesting thing to me. I had a question, something you said just spurred a thought in my head, but it doesn't matter. We'll come back to it. What do you see the biggest barrier for that hybrid model for the theory? With your two different groups, you've got the northern part of your district and the southern part. What do you see the differences, and what would make that easier for your stakeholders?
Well, and it's our biggest barrier there is this, is the barrier for Skills for Success and just about everything else, and obviously connectivity, and applaud the governor and the broadband initiative that's happening in Alabama. I can tell you that is very, very important in the coastals, especially in our Black Belt community, access. We've been fortunate, and, in that kind of pandemic time from, fall of 20 through, different waves of it in 2022, we'd see a lot of students just coming to our campus to sit in that parking lot because they don't have that access. And you go and you go up to Calvert and the local McDonald's and you see people parked around there, right? So the signs are all around you that connectivity is an issue. And from what I've seen, and I know our campus, we're kind of part of some plans for some hubs, and that gets way out of my capacity talking about technology, but I know it's going on, and I know it's going to be really excited to get that. And so, that, and then of course the availability. We've had some challenges when the person has the spider phone, with all the cracks in it that have been dropped, and I can't watch it and all that kind of stuff. But that's been very limited, and that's not necessarily a Baldwin County versus our rural community, because certainly there are places in Baldwin County where access is an issue as well. And so, making sure you provide those resources to the student to make sure they can do it. And then, a big challenge that Houston, you and I have talked about too, is just making sure that we're getting students that want to be in it. And I was very fortunate that we spurred our Skills for Success, and for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, it was kind of part of my job. I was a quasi coordinator, and Tracy Ethington on my team and did a wonderful job just picking up the slack and helping me. back in February of this year, we're very fortunate. We brought in a young man, Joseph Meds, that we've been able to kind of say, hey, this is now your baby, and take care of it. Although we're still very engaged in it, but man, having that person dedicated to do that is really a lifesaver for us. So that we can continue to offer I always say workforce is, you got a toolbox and it's got to be full of tools.
Yeah.
It's got to be full of tools.
Well, he is an amazing addition to your team. Tracy is fabulous. Every team needs a Tracy, and I think every team needs a Joseph. His energy, and I don't talk to him as much now as I used to because I have Destiny and Darlisha down here in the South. But, we were excited when I knew he was making that transition. Yeah. I thought, okay, well, they're going to have a dedicated person, so that's going to go through the roof in volume and quality of your programming.
Sure,
it's going to maintain that. I wish every college would add someone just for this, and most have actually. Yeah, there's only a few that are still not doing that, but he has been a great addition to what was already a team. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention your teammate that just left, Megan.
Oh God!
I know she wasn't really a coastal employee, but
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter for the listeners. When we were filming 2 to 3 years ago, almost, we were filming our school bus course, and we sold that to the State Department of Transportation before the course was even built. Mm-hmm. Like, well, it was on its way, and it wasn't ready. And Marcus Early was the Gulf Shore City Schools Transportation Director, and he was in that meeting, and he came up to me afterwards. He said, "I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm in." And I was like, "Great. Thanks. We need to film school bus." So I drove from Tampa for some other thing. I forget what it was, and met him here with our videographer. And Megan was the guy, with the lady that he chose. And I was like, "Hey, if you can teach that, you can probably teach CDL." Mm-hmm. So here's Josh Duplantis. And tell me how that story went down.
Well, yeah, it was based on your introduction, and I'll never forget. I think I was blowing your phone up that week to make sure I got the course right. And I bought these cones, and I had spray paint, and I was out there, and Tracy was out there, and we were painting ourselves as much as we were painting the parking lot to make sure we got it right. And you introduced us to Megan, and I always appreciate you because I think you drove down for a few hours, and I think you had to make a 4-hour drive back to see your boy play ball. So,
we did, yeah.
But I appreciated you being there with us, and that was really our first interaction with Megan. And of course, she was a non-traditional instructor, being I would say a young female instructor in the CDL thing. And I say that with the utmost appreciation for her. And we did a little going away party, and I'll finish that story and come back. We didn't run her off to make sure I clarify that, but we had a little going away gig for her about 2 weeks ago, and I went by and told her the first time we had that CDL conference, and here we come trudging in. I think it was at Prattville at the hotel there.
The Legends.
And I just remember her, a lot of people and a lot of those questions like, "This is your instructor?" And of course me, I had to kind of boost up like a little rooster and say, "Yes, she is." Well, so that was a proud moment. But she, and I told her this, and I meant it. And I said, I've been at this for a while now, and I've never had a contract or a part-time employee make as much of a difference in a brand stamp on not just one program, because then she started teaching heavy equipment for us,
she
but
did.
Multiple programs in my career, and Megan did that, and and really parlayed it. In fact, from what she was telling me, her new job, which is up in New York State, and Houston, I'm convinced that she's going to get cold up there. It's going to be freezing. She's going to have to get under the truck hood and 10-degree weather, and she'll be back. At least that's the narrative in my head, at least.
I hope so.
I just said see you later, not goodbye, but just quality instruction, mm-hmm. and you saw that from day one. Quality instruction, and I always said, like how many times I would go down there to kick off a class. We stay down there. We run a lot of classes out of our Foley site, and we're here in Fairhope, so it's only about 25 minutes away. But I'd go down to kind of give the speech to the guys, and they'd walk in and they'd see their instructor. And my standing joke was always they'd cut their eyes a little bit and say, "This is our instructor." And then, I'd have a meeting or something else. I'd go back by at noon, and they would just be following Megan like a mama duck, and everybody
Absolutely.
perfectly in line doing what they were supposed to do. So, I can't say enough about her, and again, her impact that she's made on our program. And really, our instructor that's now going to come up and carry some of that load for us really came up under her tutelage. And so that has made us,
I wondered about that.
very, very comfortable.
Yeah, she definitely set the bar. And what Josh is not saying is that most CDL instructors around the state are middle-aged dudes, and she was
or old dudes,
and she was, I don't know if she was even 30 years old, and
I'll never guess a woman's age. So we'll stay out of that.
And so she was young, and we'll say her hair was curled, and she was a young female, and it was, and I was worried about it, but I remember watching her do that school bus video, like she was laser focused, and like it was mission accomplished right away. Like everything was gonna be perfect with her, and I was like, well, let's test it. So I asked Marcus, and I was like, hey man, we're not gonna steal her away from you. Just this is part-time work. And dadgummit, if you didn't steal her away from she quit her she literally quit her day job to come work with you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and it's really because of our partners, because you don't have any class without demand, and it's just like I said about quality programs. I don't know that we've marketed one piece of our CDL program outside of just hey, and it's everything with this stuff. I think has this bell curve, right? You got early adopters, and you got and that's one thing, especially with the CDL program for that Skills for Success has brought forth. And I said the word efficiency earlier, and
I like that, efficient.
Love it. Efficient, right? And so what you got when you bring an efficient model like we did into want to get, for us, Class B is the big thing, that want to, and like our previous conversation about, working that into the advancement matrix, but there was never any capacity for them to do it, right? Because the model wasn't as efficient as it is now. And so, you bring that efficient model to the market, and all of a sudden, like, boom, there it is. There's all this pent up demand. And there were times where I know Tracy would kind of get frustrated because they were leaning on us so hard to run the next cohort. It's like we got to get, through one to start the other, because it's a little bit of a process with having to get a written permit and do all the external things. But and we've really seen that with a lot of the models. With the fiber optics, we came out the gate real hot, and again, the first thing you do is try to take care of that pent up demand, and then kind of see where it normalizes. I think now we've kind of normalized in CDL and kind of know just how often we need to run it to make sure we're continuing to meet the demand.
That's a really cool thing, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't have a CDO program before Skills for Success, so that allowed you to serve your people in a brand new way.
Yeah,
and I think that's true. Like Chat Valley in Phoenix City, they don't have a program. They don't have a truck. Chad Sutton, LBW, they don't have a truck.
Right.
Other places like Lawson State. So watching your approach helped me take it out to other schools. Like, well, hey, here's how Duplantis does it.
Be careful there. In
a parking lot, in the parking lot of a municipal building. Like, here's how it was accomplished there, and like no instructor on staff, no truck, no range. Like, here's how you can be creative and flexible. And so we did that. And I don't know if you ever knew that we took your model, your non-traditional model, and ran it out there.
Sure.
But that's impacted a lot of colleges around the state. A lot of people.
Good.
A lot of people getting jobs.
Yep. We called it the BYOT.
Absolutely.
Bring your own truck. And I mean, obviously the cost of the barrier to entry with new CDL programs is the cost, especially in the traditional model.
Oh, for sure.
It's over $1 million for sure. And of course, the insurance and all that. And so that's really what we sat down and talked about. We were like, okay, how can we do this? And, because everybody wants proof of concept, right?
Yep.
You got to figure out a way to do that. And just looking at it and saying, okay, we don't have a truck. Well, what if we target incumbent workers that are under workman's comp with entities that have trucks, right? I mean, it's pretty simple when you think about it.
Yeah.
No overhead. And it also allowed us, which is something I believe in, a big part of my workforce philosophy is reciprocity. I've started so many programs over 22 years in this business or so to know that if there's no reciprocity, it more often than not falls apart, right? So what's that reciprocity in the CDO? They're not paying, through the generosity of the Alabama legislature and what the chancellor's done. I mean, it's just a great model.
Thank you, guys.
But going to those companies and say, okay, look, we're going to pay the instructor. We've got the model. The model is efficient. You've got to come to us. You've got to make the logistical arrangements to get that non-licensed driver to him and a truck in our parking lot. You got to pay the fuel there. You're going to pay them to be there, which again, always to me is a little bit more assurance of success, because then, of course, we even in times we've had to hold students accountable. Of course, we try to take care of any issues there right away with the student, but then they also knew that HR supervisor or whoever it was at their municipality, and they're
expecting it.
I'll be honest with you, I've had to call a couple mayors here and there, only twice over the last 3 years.
That's awesome.
And usually when you get to do that, it shuts down any of the issues that you may have that led to the phone call in the first place. But we really like that about how we created that model. Again, it really was trying to figure out how we make it work. But again, it gave our partners some skin in the game. And again, that reciprocity to me always drives success, because then you got more people and a little bit more investment in the outcome.
I love it. And I've seen that, and you've mentioned that some of these municipalities have their wages increases based on what they complete with Skills for Success. And we've touted that to in our legislative ask coming up. We were trying to send it out this past Monday. We're going to send it out maybe today to all the colleges, like, hey, here are the businesses you've said you've served, and we need you to send this survey out. How many people have you hired? How many have you upskilled? What are the cost savings?
Oh, yeah.
What have you done to be more efficient because of Skills for Success? And so we want to capture all that data to show the legislatures, hey, you gave us this funding. Here's what we did with it. We really made Alabama better. What about the economic impact of Skills for Success? And here's what I mean. Like, so you put on the course, but you have to buy food, you have to rent machines, you have to buy PPE, you have to do all these things. And now you train people who maybe get a new job, so they're making more money, or they're upskilled, so they're making more money, or the companies are saving money, so they're investing in other things. Maybe you can't put a dollar figure on it, but what do you think about the economic impact of Skills for Success in your area?
Yeah, I think, and really, I think my viewpoint of how we gauge, workforce development initiatives as a whole, sometimes falls short, in my opinion, for us and people all around the country. If you're just going to sit back and say, well, I trained 10 people for 10 hours, it's 100 hours, yay me, let's go. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but again, when you start to look at it, and there's really two metrics that I like to look at across workforce, programs, if you can get that data, and sometimes we can, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, but obviously, you turnover. And, a big thing in this economy that I always tell people is like, we always talk about why do people leave jobs? Well, people leave bad managers, and all that's true. But a lot of times people leave jobs because they don't feel like they're competent enough to do it. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's kind of what we're bringing to the table with some of this, right? Some assurance that I can do this job, right? I can splice this cable. I can dig this trench. I can do these things. And to me, that's huge. And you start looking at that and start to think about the reduction in the cost of turnover. Yeah. And most of the research out there, and it's not, one of your 10 listeners can certainly call my cell phone and we can kind of argue this data point of 150% of salary. But that's, if you look at the research on the cost of turnover, mm-hmm. that seems to be what it is, right? By the time you take in, that recruitment cost, onboarding cost for that next person. And so to me, that's huge. And we've seen loose data that shows that, a well-run training program can reduce that cost of turnover by 20-30%. If that's 10 people a year,
a lot of money.
At 150% of a $50,000 salary, that's $750,000, mm-hmm. right off the bat. The second big matrix that I like to look at, and of course training is directly related to, is to reduce cost of quality errors. And that's mm-hmm. something I know a lot of our business partners in aviation, in manufacturing, all really look at that. Okay. And so that's a very easy, when you look at basic research methodology, right? You got your group that's been through training, you got your group that hasn't. Are you getting customer feedback for those kind of, and how much does that rework? And I told you I worked for Cargill earlier, right? Like that was a big thing, rework. We got bad batches of feedback. You always worked it into cattle cubes,
Yeah.
Right? So if you screwed up horse feed, you can always rework it. But that rework cost.
Yeah.
Right. And so those are two metrics that I like. And we actually have a separate workforce program that'll be here in our conference. We'll have a representative there, and it is not Skills for Success, but it's around NC3 credentials.
No.
We're using adult ed. But we have figured in the last year, and it's a partnership with Collins Aerospace, and this is hard data, not soft data, because we've tracked it very closely with them. We saved them about $1.8 million in the reduction of cost of turnover, and have been saving about $10,000 a month for the last 8 months in the reduction of quality errors. And we're sure about that because we've had a treatment and control group that's going through training.
Yeah.
So again, that's outside of the scope of Skills for Success per se, but in the scope of workforce development, right? So, and then you think about that from the individual's perspective, right?
Yeah.
That consistency of that paycheck, from them not leaving that job, and what it does from an economic impact family, or from a family perspective, from an individual and a citizen's perspective in the communities that we all want to live and we want to see thrive.
Well, and two, like if they're satisfied in their job and they feel confident, they're going to keep that job. So then that family, like it or not, they're going to spend a little bit more money because they're secure in that job.
Yep.
Which, I mean, everybody around them is going to benefit from that.
And I will let me tell you a quick story, because this is so funny. This was my kid's birthday this past week, and I got my 11-year-old some new golf clubs. We were out there Sunday at a local golf course. He wanted to try them out, of course, and a young man pulls up behind me, and I actually had a Collins Aerospace shirt on. They gave me a polo. It's real light, good to wear on the golf course. But the young man comes up and says, "You work for Collins?" I said, "No, I don't." I said, "But they gave me a shirt. I really like it." And he kept staring at me, and he said, "You're Dr. Duplantis." I said, "Oh crap! What have I done now?"
Maybe.
But he said, I graduated from your A&P school.
Yeah.
And I work at Collins now, and I've actually he had been through our credit training and our non-credit training. And he was there. He had his girlfriend. They were out there Sunday afternoon playing a little golf. And so, I mean, you just think, I mean, it's a simple reminder of him just spending money out there on a Sunday, of the economic impact that some of this stuff has. He's in a quality job, making a good wage, and that's what he's doing with it, right?
So you're telling me, the new system office motto is "Make life better."
Yeah.
So for this young man, credit, non-credit training out of Coastal, now on a Sunday afternoon, rather than doing whatever, he's playing golf with his girlfriend.
Exactly.
Is his life better?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Man, well done on that.
I kind of turned I said, "It works. It works."
Yes.
Thankfully.
Well, sometimes we do these things. I remember when we did that first food and beverage course with you, I don't know if it showed, I was terrified because I was about to quit a really good job to do something that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so, it seemed to work that week, but just thinking about, well, is this going to work? And man, I was just like, okay, we'll see. So I get that, knowing the success of it is going to, that really helps you move to the next thing, which is a great segue. I'm going to put my Julie Frizzell hat on. She's our executive director. She's not our only vision caster, but she does a lot of dreaming and just kind of coming up with some things. So what's next do you see for two parts? Skills for Success, where does it need to go next? And it's an honest answer is fantastic because you're visionary too. And then for the system, the whole system, where are we going next?
Let me go to the system thing first, because I think our system, and I always tell this to people in our college, like we are a workforce development organization. Sometimes it's like, well, there's Duplantis, he's the workforce guy. No, we're all the workforce people.
Yes, we are.
Our dean of nursing and allied health is a workforce person. That is a better career outcome across post-secondary education, not just 2 year. I'm not talking 2 year, 4 year. But a better career outcome is still the number one reason that people pursue post-secondary education to begin with, right? So if you take that into context and you listen to your customers, and that's who they are, a better career outcome is what they want. So if that is the case, aren't we all workforce developers?
I like to think so.
We're all. I strongly believe that. But, I think what we've seen in the market too is kind of this idea of skill-based. And, so we talk skills for success, and you hear this skills-based hiring, and you look at some of the things that are going. I think we need to get, and when I say system, I mean as a training system, as an employment system, a little bit better at that. The Harvard has this project on workforce, and at first I was a little worried. I was like, it's Harvard, right? Like this is a Ivy Tower, and how applicable will this project on workforce research be for folks like me who are boots on the ground, running programs, doing things, day in and day out, and it really has been. But they wrote a wonderful article that says from pronouncement to practice, and how we're really falling short, and a lot of it from the company's perspective on this idea of skills-based hiring. And to put it simply, they really didn't find that it made much of an impact from companies that said, no, we're going to do skill-based hiring, and it not really coming to fruition. And to simplify all that, so I don't get too academic on the podcast per se, but like if you got 10 candidates in front of you, and you got 5 that you've deemed all have the skills necessary to do the job, but then one has that maybe that bachelor's degree, you kind of the HR folks are still kind of ignoring the rest, and when that happens, you're not truly getting in this idea of skill-based hiring.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things that we do as a college, and I'm fortunate that I get to chair our program review committee. And so what I do there is before we even release the template for our programs, and this is mostly credit programs, I go out and do my research, and I start looking at the specific skills required by employers. And we have the Lightcast system, and if you really get you can get this data analytics stuff right, I can scan every job description within a 200-mile radius of this campus, and that's actually in essence what we do. And then the top skills emerge, and then we're asking our programs, okay, we teach these courses, and we have these certificates, certifications, degrees, language that actually gets pretty complicated, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm asking them is, says, you got to show me through this process, not me, like me personally, but right, like our committee, how are we teaching these skills? Because we can pretty much prove to you that that's what the marketplace is looking for. And, I usually wrap that up to say, I want you to be confident if you're talking to a prospective student across the board, again, whether skills for success or a full associate's degree, that entering this program will give you the competencies necessary to be successful at some level in the workplace. And that's the match. And I think that match has kind of gotten off kilter over the last 20 years. And of course, you've seen that crumble a lot in the last 2 years per se. We've seen states that have dropped, particular degree requirements.
Yeah.
And we talk about that in several programs. And actually, Keith Glines, who's helping produce this podcast right now, we were talking about that with some of his audiovisual students. So, hey, sometimes they just need a class.
Yeah.
And they learn enough skills. It's the same thing in our machine tool program. That's a program where, man, a young person comes in, they get 2 or 3 classes, and they get scalped by industry so fast. And on our books, it's like, is that success? Is it not? They didn't complete anything, but then we got quality employment.
And you mentioned that. We were talking to Keith yesterday morning about his keynote on Friday, and I remember John Hawley always not complaining. He never complains. He finds solutions. He's the dean at Calhoun, but he's like, hey, why doesn't that job count as a checkbox?
Yeah.
Like, why is it not just as good as that degree? Because they may come back, they may not, but they're making money. They're doing what they want to do.
Absolutely.
The company's happy with it. So why does it not count?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, man. See, that happens all the time. We're 52 minutes in.
52 minutes in.
But why doesn't that count? And so for us, we do the same thing, just briefly. Like when we start a course, like you say, hey, we need this program. Cool. How many jobs are out there? And what are the skills? And until you fill out those 2 things, we don't build.
Right.
And so that way, like we have like Meat Cutter, you mentioned that today. It was kind of tricky. Still working on that, but everything, Pat, that was the one that didn't really take off. But everything else, like we don't build it if you can't tell us what they actually need to be able to do.
That's right.
And so it's really good. So we're 52 minutes in. It never fails that we run long in these things, but this has been quite the cerebral podcast. And I'm thankful to hear all this stuff, man, to capture it on. Has some good sound bites. Final thoughts from you, man, on Coastal's future, your future. We've
been boasting this week that we touched over 10,000 lives, and about 7,600 on the credit side, and we're up to 2,750-ish on the non-credit workforce side. And so, so it's always a challenge to make sure that we're constantly serving everywhere. I think that's something that at Coastal we balance, right? It's like, I told people all the time, if especially with Skills for Success, I was like, if I can be the community college of Foley, I can rock the numbers out. But that's not our mission. Our mission is to serve everywhere, and it's to provide the same level of good service in Gilbertown as we do in Gulf Shores, in Bruton as we do in Fairhope. Everything at our college is important. Every place at our college is important. That's not to say that the challenge of covering 20% of Alabama's landmass is ever going to go away, because it won't. But I feel like we're more equipped at this point in time to do that and do it well than my, and I say, because of course I've been following the college, been here 5 years, but been doing workforce development in Alabama for 10, than it's really ever been. And it's unique. And I will tell you, when Jeff Lynn kind of nudged me, 5 years ago, the merger intrigued me, right? The fact that it was still coming together, because I think we'll see a little bit more of that in post-secondary, maybe not next year or the next, but in the next 15, 20 years. And so I really do think our college, has and is continuing to pave the way. And it's certainly exciting to be part of that.
Well, I can see that just watching the growth you've had just in the last 6 years since I've been around, and seeing who's doing what, movers and shakers, leaders, shapers. That's you, Dr. Duplantis. I appreciate the time today, you and your all your colleagues here at Coastal, to let us come in and have this conversation. Also, I appreciate all your work on the WOA conference.
Thank you.
Obviously, it's in your home base, and you made it something really spectacular. It's going to be a really good schedule, and so we're kicking that off tonight.
Yep.
And
we can keep the hurricane scares away. We're in good shape.
Yeah. Well, man, again, thanks for having us down here, man. I look forward to whatever is next for you guys here at Coastal, and for you personally. I imagine big things are in your future.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. So for all you folks out there listening, including number one fan, my mom, literally, we have data to back that up. She likes and subscribes to everything. But we encourage all of you to like, subscribe, and share on all podcast platforms. Have a good one.